Welcome to 2 Month Review, a weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter and 3%, where we take one giant book, break it down bit by bit, section by section, and talk some shit about it. This season, we are doing William Gaddis's JR, and I am Chad Post from Open Letter Books. I'm joined, as always, by Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox.
Hi, Chad. Pleasure to be here. It's so wonderful.
Yeah! End of the year!
That's as excited as I could get. Sorry, I tried.
We're joined by special guest, professor at Roosevelt University, Vincent Francone.
Good pronunciation, Chad.
I went hard. I leaned into the Italian for you.
Yeah, I'm glad somebody needs to.
Do you teach Italian literature at Roosevelt?
Oh, exclusively, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just all Italo Calvino and Umberto Eco and all that. Yeah. I wish that'd be great, actually.
It's all three Italian authors that we all know.
Yeah, exactly. No, I teach freshmen how to avoid comma splices.
Got it. I could use your help. I could use your help then.
Yeah, anytime.
Absolutely. So, Vince, wait, you're also an author.
Yeah.
I meant to grab and bring over.
No, that's okay. You don't have to show it. I'll flash something. Yeah, I wrote a memoir in 2015 called Like a Dog, which is a book about me working really terrible jobs, including adjunct teaching. So if you ever want to know what it's like to be an adjunct instructor, I think I captured it fairly well. And then my more recent thing is a essay collection / memoir called The Soft Lunacy, which is all about book obsession and nerding out about that shit.
Nice. Very nice. And how? So you're based in Chicago too, right?
I am. Yeah.
How are things in Chicago right now?
We got our first snowstorm yesterday. It was pretty mild, but I did have to, and it turned to rain this morning. So I spent the morning preparing for this by shoveling slush from my front yard because my landlord is a great guy, but he's, I don't know, an octogenarian, and I feel kind of guilty, like calling him up and being like, "Can you shovel that, please?"
Oh my God. Yeah. I know what you mean. I had to, before Alex was born, I had to shovel out the biggest snowstorm that we had in Rochester to get the car out to be able to get to the hospital.
Jesus.
It was good fun.
No pressure.
I finished as the guy that plows the driveway showed up.
That's perfect timing. That seems like
scene.
There's something there that sort of spells out your child's life. Like that's setting up something. I'm not quite sure what.
And I'm sure you shoveled all that on that parental adrenaline of like lifting the car up with your bare hands to save the child, like that kind of, right? Like the mother who can train over her head to protect.
I did, because there's so much snow. I broke our neighbor's fence that our house and ours. It's like I got a text message in the hospital being like, "You need to be careful. You broke my wooden fence with the snow, blah, blah, blah." I was like, "I'm in the fucking hospital."
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway,
I'm bringing life into this world.
I'm bringing life into this world. I'm bringing life into this glorious world of pure happiness. So today we're going over pages, what was it, 160?
I have a different edition, so.
Oh, you have the older, older one. Yeah, that's the one I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love, that's the one that I read first.
I think we went like 146-ish to 209.
Yeah.
In this New York Times, or
New York Review Books.
NYRB, sorry.
Yep. It's like scenes like 19 through 31, which we can read in a second. But Vince, have you read Gaddis before? This is your new entry to this.
Yeah, I haven't read this. I read Frolic of His Own.
Oh, shit.
Like 20 years ago. I worked for a law firm, and that book was making its way from office to office in the firm because like the lawyers had heard it was a legal satire and thought it would be really cool to read, and none of them could finish it. And my predecessor at the job couldn't finish it. And she was this woman I'd never met, but everyone was just like, "Oh, she is the smartest person I've ever known. And she like reads, Hemingway and like William Burroughs books. She's really sharp." And so she couldn't even finish it. And I was so tired of hearing about her. I was like, fuck it. I'm going to finish this if it kills me. I just want to so I kind of read it out of spite.
Nice.
But it's great. I loved it.
My favorite opening lines of all time. Like the one, the justice. You get justice in the next world. This world, you get the law.
Yeah, exactly. Which is like this one with money. Yeah, it's like, I guess, I don't know. I've never read anything else by him, but is that a Gaddis thing where he just sets up the theme like right out of the gate?
I don't know what the first line of recognitions is anymore, but that one's all like artifice and counterfeiting. So it's possible. But like this one, this money is like, these two are very similar in that way. But
I liked Frolic of His Own a lot. I didn't think I was going to, it kind of takes a while to get into it, but I think JR is already like feels more accessible weirdly.
Yeah. I had a problem. My problem with Fall of His Own is I had to buy the ebook eventually because they've printed on like bright ass white paper with like 10-point font. And I eventually, and it's in like typewriter script at points in time because it's like, what do you call those? Like when you interview the person for, not an indictment, but
I worked for lawyers for 10 years. I should know this.
Yeah.
Deposition.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, there we go. Depositions, and then they're in like typewritten font, so it's like it was impossible for me to read. So I was like having a hard time getting into it by like the sheer physical difficulty of it, which is similar, weirdly, to what's on the next 3% podcast where we talk about Bottom's Dream, because Bottom's Dream 2 is something that is physically impossible to read.
Are you actually? I heard you joke recently. Are you really going to make that the next 2-month review book?
Out of your mind? No.
Yeah, I figured you're crazy.
With it, that'll be really interesting, but it's not going to be read on here. Nobody could get it. I don't even know anyone who would read it. We would all die.
Yeah, there's a guy that last summer that I met through a friend, and he's kind of a big. He likes to read impossible books, so we were kind of talking about Finnegan's Wake and that kind of stuff. And he told me he wanted to read Bottom's Dream as a book club, and he invited me to it. And I there's no copies that I can get, but he apparently scanned the entire book. Like he just has a copy. Yeah.
Can you put in touch with him? Because there are, if you watch the, I don't know if it's in there. If you watch the videos, I started a Substack for Delkey Archive to go through their Delkey Archive stuff. It's just under delkeyarchive.substack.com. And I took videos of the warehouse. In the warehouse, there are 100 or so copies of the book that are just sitting there. However, there are rats and mice living in at least half of them. So we need to figure out how to redo that book, and someone with scanned files would be mega helpful right now.
I'll ask. Yeah, he said he scanned the whole thing. I did not. I was not about to ask to see them. I just took his word for it. But it is. I looked at a book at the bookstore once and thumbed through it. It is a clusterfuck.
Yeah, it doesn't. I didn't include this on the part that I read, but the description of it from Wikipedia is like it's about like translating Poe. And a bunch of people talking about translating Poe, and I was like, there is no fucking way that reading the first couple pages of that, I had any idea that that's all what was going on.
No, it's a beautiful object, but there's no way I'm going to read. You'd have to buy a new piece of furniture to have that in your house.
You really do. You have to
it's just like huge, imposing thing.
Yeah. That's a great book blurb. We'll have to buy a new piece of furniture.
They should sell it exclusively at IKEA. Like Delkey and IKEA could have made a joint venture.
Good idea. Oh, we might pick that up. We'll pick that up.
There you go.
Idea.
Do you think if we're making a impossible book club where it's just big, hard, nasty books, right? That would JR at some point be on that book club? Do you think if you were making the syllabus or the reading list?
I'll jump in and say so far no. I don't know. I don't think so.
No as well. Like it's long and it requires time, but I wouldn't necessarily call it difficult.
The thing that I find difficult about it this week reading it was remembering the people's names. When they got referenced, it'd be like Dan, and then I like looked up I had to look up on the William Gaddis annotations thing, and there's a character list, which is where I accidentally discovered something really funny that I wonder if you guys picked up on through this reading, which we'll get to. But it'd be like, oh, Dan Decephalus, and I was like, that's right, that's who Dan is. Like I had a hard time remembering the name Hyde, who is Hyde, Major Hyde versus Coach Vogel. Like a few times I get tripped up on that as just a memory thing. And reading it non-continuously, reading it every Monday and Tuesday and having the days in between isn't helpful for that. But other than that, I don't think it's super hard. I think it's just a book you let wash over you.
I gather that I always wanted to read this in recognitions, and I put both off, but when I saw you were doing this, I jumped on the chance to this is my opportunity to finally read JR. But I don't know, recognitions always seems, maybe because it's longer, way more intimidating than JR ever did. I think JR, because I flipped through it in the past and looked at it, it's just, I like books like this. I like Manuel Puig and things that are all dialogue. I know it says way more characters to balance than you're ever going to get in a Manuel Puig book or something like that. But it's not all that tough. And even if I miss something, I'm kind of don't care. I just feel like I'm enjoying it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there are little plot points that we either miss or get by, but they'll get picked up eventually. So far you're a big fan?
I'm really enjoying it. Yeah. I mean, I think the beginning does a lot. I know we're talking about a different part of the book, but the opening scene, I think, does a lot of good to get the reader into it. I mean, it's a really funny scene, and there's not a whole lot of characters, so it's pretty easy to sort of get into it that way. I feel like Gaddis did a favor by just starting it off on this kind of really great note that's 20 some pages, so you're already into the book by the time it switches scenes. So I think the hardest parts kind of come shortly after that, and there's maybe one part of what we're going to talk about today that was a little bit of a challenge, but it's just once you get into the rhythm of it, you kind of surrender to it and just allow yourself to be just have the book do something to you that it's going to do, and not like put all the demands on it you might normally put on a more conventional book. It's really not all that weird by my standards.
No, it's very patterned though. And it references that pattern frequently, which I think is interesting. That comes up in this section too. And I mean, that is like a fundamental element of it, because it is about the age, he's using the age of mechanical reproduction by Walter Benjamin as sort of one of the parts of this, and the idea of the player piano and all the piano stuff at the factory that's repetitive and like is constructed that way. So a lot of these patterns sort of repeat. And I think that that's really interesting. So rather than your normal like up, down climax thing, we're getting these scenes that seem chaotic, but they're very circular too. And keep moving back and forth between different areas of commerce, and it gives it a certain flow and rhythm, I think.
Yeah, I love the first scene as well. And thinking about it right now, it's almost kind of like when you start a new video game where it's going to be like a large world that you can explore. They give you a little walkthrough where they're going to teach you the mechanics, but not make it to where it's like a tutorial, like you're actually playing the game. And I feel like that first 20 pages is definitely like that. Like, people are going to be talking. There's going to be a lot of satire. Let me introduce you to the worlds and some of the themes, and then we're going to go off and running right after this.
Because I know so much about music composition, I'm going to say it's kind of like those opening bars of like a song that sets like the key and the tempos and the sort of realm that you're going to be playing with. They're like a fugue, I suppose. I again don't know anything about music, but I feel like fugues have that where it sets a bar and then things go up or down off of it for the rest of the time until it closes again. So that does have kind of that feel. We should get an expert on the Ring and Wagner to come on here. Because I am not one. Are you, Brian? You know so much about classical music. I just figured you would.
No, I know like two things about one thing, and that's about it. I think for me though, I do find one of the things I'm finding very difficult about this book as somebody that writes and aspires to keep writing, how just like ridiculously humbling this book is as well, at how good it is and how he maintains it. It's kind of soul crushing in a way. I'd be like, I'm going to be a basketball one day, and you watch Steph Curry hit 105 3-pointers in practice. You're like, I'm going to do basketball at intramurals, and I'm going to be an accountant one day. Like, I feel like that reading this book.
There is that, but like, I'm aspiring to write more, and I'm trying to write some actual like fiction, which is not really what I've ever done before. And it's the way I've reconciled that, because I hear you, but it's like, there are writers that I admire, and Gaddis is probably someone I'm going to put in this camp. People like Joyce, who I spent a long time reading, and Faulkner and people like that. And I'll never ever be able to write like that. And I think I realized that. So I'm like, I'm going to aim for like, somebody I admire who I might be able to like rip off in an effective enough way, like Sergei Dovlatov or Vonnegut, or people who have more like plain Midwestern style. It's direct and not so. Because you're right. I mean, there's moments of this that are just where it's the narrator comes in, and I'm just like, oh my God. I was rereading what I think is a sex scene in the sort of first scene that we're supposed to talk about in the loft. And it's like rereading that just before we got on, I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is insane. Like, how did he pull this off? Or it doesn't feel like so labored and overwrought that it's annoying, but it's just like really dense and kind of brilliant. So I could never do that. And I'm just like, fine, I'm not supposed to do that. I'm more an airplane read, kind of guy. I'm okay.
It's interesting. This isn't meant to be a slight towards anyone or anything, but I do feel like there has been a difference in the fact that we have these masters of literature that were taught for so long and that we're studying, that you guys are like, there's no way, that anxiety influences too much. And for so many people that are producing books now, producing fiction or memoirs, I think this kind of like gone away from these writers, in that for that specific reason of like, oh no, that's too much. Like we can do this other thing. So like ignore fuck modernism, fuck that kind of writing. Let's write about like our experiences very directly here because that's a realm where we can compete.
You think like, are you saying that essentially the humbling yourself or sort of knowing your lane is resulting in like less ambition to the point where we're not producing another JR anytime soon? I mean, you might be right, but
I think there are some people who are, but I think the massive like MFA system is to design like put aside the masterpieces and focus on the accomplishable,
possibly
which is interesting, at least some of them, because I think it would be fun to be like, oh, I take the masterpieces and what's next? And like, you can't write like Gaddis, but you can write like something else.
Maybe. I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I think maybe I'm just naturally humble in that way. I do know that Jonathan Franzen, who I know is sort of relevant to this conversation because he was a big fan, but he didn't like JR apparently. I thought I saw something years ago about how when he was sort of trying to figure out whether he wanted to be on Oprah's book club, said that he was writing in the Faulkner tradition and that was his ambition. And I always thought that was kind of pretentious, but I just don't like Jonathan Franzen. So
same thing. He's going to be a big topic next week, guys. So
okay, that's exciting. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's next week when Ryan Chapman comes on. There's a lot of Franzen.
Oh, great! I know I've mentioned it before, but in some ways, I kind of like comparing this to Duck's Newburyport, where it's big. It's told through a voice primarily, and very satirical at the same time. Like I feel like those could be in a similar conversation, or if you were putting together a class, like those two could be in the same class.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously that's the exception, not the not the rule. Obviously, there's not a lot of Duck's Newburyport being published from big houses or anything. So.
You're right, but I mean, Duck's Newburyport was really accessible despite its intimidating length. So you're right. I think it's very similar where once you just kind of get into it and you kind of figure out how the book should be read, you just roll with it. It's really not a chore. It's just a time commitment. So you're right. And it's pretty maybe that's the kind of ambition that we should be aiming for, something that is demanding without being, I don't know, demanding to the point of pretentious or less rewarding. Duck's Newburyport was really rewarding. And when I finished it, I was really like, I had this picture of me that my wife took where I was just holding it up like, yeah, like I did it. I finished it. I was so happy.
I beat the game. Take a picture.
I did it, goddamn. Yeah. But I kind of wonder if JR is going to be a similar feeling where it's just like, done. Yeah, finished it.
These are both very voice-driven books too, which is interesting, which I think is a key. So that first scene, let's jump into it. The first scene is when Bast and Stella end up back at his studio, which has been broken into, destroyed. They shit all over the piano. The police come and are like, oh, there are people just like, they just come and break in these places to fuck and like wreck everything. There's been some kids who also shit in your piano. And in the midst of that, there is a near sex scene, if not a sex scene, between Stella and Bast, who are cousins.
Are they cousins? Did we figure that out?
I don't know for sure. At this moment in time, I don't think that it's for sure because they keep bringing up, Stella brings up several times in this section when she's talking to her husband of like, well, he's just not sure that he's James's son. Like if maybe he's not sure he's James's son. Like it comes up a couple times of like the possibility, because this is where Thomas, who passed away, his wife left him for James, who then had Edward Bast and adopted a son.
Well, they're related though. They're related though.
Yeah, they're related one way or another.
This is wrong in some count.
Yeah, this is, well, I mean, we just did Otter, and like wrong is very there's a lot of moral compass shifting that's been going on in the past month.
On the movie rating system of wrongness, this is like a PG-13. We just got out of an NC-17.
Reading that, my moral compass was literally like spin the wheel. It's just like it's all okay.
Well, all right, I don't want to come off judgmental if people have these relations, so I should probably retract that comment.
I think it's okay to be judgmental of trying to fuck your cousin.
I'd be
possible sister.
Georgia, I wouldn't say that too loudly, but like,
I don't want to lose you any viewers. Is my point.
There goes all of Alabama.
We're good.
Damn.
But this is the possible sex scene that like on my page is on 139. Like it's a long paragraph that just I had to read 2 or 3 times to try and figure out like if this, I thought it was a near sex scene that was interrupted. So am I right in interpreting it that way? Like they almost do, and then it's interrupted. But there's a few.
I was interpreting it as well. But there's no. Yeah, it's a long paragraph.
But even this whole part about like the thrusting and the whole like.
Mhm.
There's something here about the thunder to come and the thrust to come, and I mean, you know, maybe I'm reading that from a different POV than I should be, but it felt like there was a moment I was like, is this maybe they are having sex? I don't know. Like, I don't think it really mattered.
Like orgasmic and pulsing, and it was all there for sure.
Yeah. But again, it's another one of those. If I'm misreading it, I kind of don't care because I think I get what I'm supposed to get from it, and I get enough to know that like they're not supposed to be doing this; they're interrupted.
Yeah. I like one of my favorite lines is from this section where Norman, Stella's husband, comes in. He's like, "Sorry, it's a hell of a way to meet you, Edward." Like Edward has never met his cousin/sister's husband before.
That's true.
Which I like. I'm down for that.
It's an interesting family.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like being a little too artistic with it, but I was just amazed at how the environment they're in, you know, it's all in shambles and broken and decayed. And then there's this gorgeous description of them about to be together. And it's just absolutely drop dead gorgeous. And then the interruption of people coming and then, you know, people showing up and stuff. I just thought it was just really fantastically done. It was so just gorgeous is the thing that comes to mind with that scene.
And this shows up at the ring as well, where he brings out, that goes to the ring motif in Sinister Pianissimo. And someone commented in here that the Wagner is all about the leitmotif, which is, of course, like a big element of this book. So the ring is reflected. So it would be good to have someone talk about composition or the composition of that compared to the composition.
Only there was a school of music somewhere where people study that kind of stuff.
Buck studies music.
Alienating another chunk of audience.
Other than a garbage.
Bye! It was nice knowing all you musicians. You should study music and not books, that's for sure. I have one other comment that came to mind, Vince, as you were talking about Frolic of Its Own, that keeps coming up here. And I mentioned it in the first episode, and it shows up again right here. So Stella and Norman leave. Bass is flipping out. He's jumping on his piano, banging everything away. And they leave, and they like are unhappy. That is an unhappy marriage. Or I don't know, maybe you should just say marriage. I shouldn't again disclose any other people.
Now, come on.
Our audience.
Is this COVID reality putting strains on all of our, we're all merging, right? I don't know. I mean, marriage and unhappiness don't necessarily have to be synonymous, but in this book they do. They're like, every marriage is pretty horrible from what I can tell. Like, Decephalus is not happily married.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
we'll get to that in a second because that's my favorite part for sure. So but this is the section. So they're driving away, and she's saying like, you're driving too fast with this rain, and they can't see, and it's like dangerous. The danger that cars represent in this book and in Gaddis's writing is like you can't even overstate it. People are constantly getting into accidents or almost in accidents. There's even a scene here where someone comes out of I think they come out of the firm and they miss a car that comes up on the curb. Like cars are like violent and dangerous things. And Frolic of His Own has multiple car accidents too. Like the one where he dies in the car accident at the end, which finally kind of resolved is like the Deus Ex Machina to resolve everything, not to put too fine a pun on it.
Yeah. No wonder the lawyers I knew didn't like that book so much. There's a lot of reasons thinking back on it why they couldn't finish it and really hated it. I thought it was just because of the writing, but I think there's a lot of things going on in that they probably just didn't care for. And the satire was a little too on the nose, but
his satire, his lawyer stuff is on the nose. That speaking of is right here in the NYRB one is page 153, but where Norman's explaining what's going on and trying to get we get a little bit of we get a lot of weird plot movement in this section where things are just explained to you suddenly. You're like, oh, okay, I need to know that piece of information. So he's explaining basically that because of, I keep saying it is Thomas. Yeah, Thomas died. That Thomas's estate includes the company, the royal company. And because of estate taxes, they would have to pay so much money for it and can lose control of the family company if Edward claims that he is also part of this inheritance. And that then things would be split up too much where they wouldn't have control anymore, in part because there's 5 shares that are missing that are gone with Gibbs, who had worked there and left and got 5 shares as he left. And so therefore they wouldn't necessarily be the majority holders of this private company that only had 100 shares. They'd have to put it on the stock market. They'd be like beholden to all these people. And then they also refer to a few different lawsuits that are in process against the company, specifically with a jukebox machine company. That comes up maybe later, but these all seem to be like that company has its like vision, but also is like a little entangled.
Mm.
And that's why he's most concerned about this form, or about the waiver being set. And then he also bitches at Stella for always wanting to go to like art things and whatever else and support culture. And it's like, fine, go to your $100 plate, blah, blah, blah. I'm the one working here.
One of my favorite things that he does, that Gaddis does, in those two scenes is, so the one before, it's more of urban decay, right? Mm-hmm. And then they get in the car, and then on our version, it's page 154, about halfway down. It says, lights approaching, passing, splashing wet surfaces and reflections. Some warn the reality of the streets and distance. Can't hardly see where you're going, he said, never stopping, scarcely slowing until out of thousands of hundreds, tens of brownstone steps, brownstone entrances, he drew up at one. And so you get like this close encounter of like passion and love in this decaying, artistic, urban like environment. And he shifts us to them going out into this sprawling, endless, terrible suburbs, and how awful the relationship is there. I really liked how those are right next to each other. I thought it was really cool stuff that Gaddis is doing there.
That is really good. Related to like the desolation part, one of my favorite parts of this too is where he's like comes in where Stella's trying to go to bed and he's like, I had a good idea, Stella. Here out of the ice in his glass at her back. If I got Edward and your aunts there in for a tour of the place, take them around the plant, give them a real look at the whole operation. I bet they're never even, it's like, why? Why? To show them they're taking the General Roll Company. Something pretty impressive. More than just a few pieces of paper they say they own. What do they own with James? About 35, blah, blah. And she's like simply getting them to a desolate place like Astoria. It wouldn't impress them. They'd be horrified. And I just Rochester across the top of that. Like, you can take someone to fucking Astoria and excite them.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, the relationships in this book are kind of I quickly saw that as being some of my favorite stuff. The male-female relationships are just kind of hilarious. And I don't know. I'm going to see how that develops this before I sort of weigh in on whether or not that's like a real point of satire that he's trying to get into. But it does feel like this book being so concerned with the idea of America and the ways in which it's sort of falling apart. That just can't help. That just seems perfect in there too. This idea of like, look at this thing that's functioning really well, this marriage or this country or this company. It's like you look a little closer and it's just all like it's all falling to shit. It's kind of nice.
I think that, like this book comes out in that time, like in the 70s, where there's a lot of those like suburban falling apart marriage affair sort of books coming out too. Mm. It might be thinking that on a very different level than what we're thinking of too.
Yeah, I read the London, I think, or the London Review of Books or LA Review of Books wrote a review of this in recognitions now that they were reprinted, and said that JR was written at a time when this is what America was becoming, and we're reading it now at a time when this is what America is. And I was sort of really interested in that. Like that's been going through my head the entire time. I think that's sort of grounding my like reading of it.
It's interesting because you're my age, Vince, and the 80s are very much this. Like this is like now it is as well, but it's very much that Reaganomics sort of like we can find a loophole and like we'll just let the market take its place, get the fuck out of the way, have all the weird stock shit that's going on. That was just like let it go and let it be okay, and it just led to like this uber decline real fast.
I'm trying to figure out how that would be as a reader in 1975 or whenever this came out, because you're right. I mean, growing up as a child of the 80s and everything that's happened as a result of all of that, it really is interesting to consider like the Reagan era, pre and post, and the reality of America at that point. So pre-Reagan, this had to feel a lot more hilarious and scary, which isn't to say it isn't still, but reading it now, like in the aftermath of so much of that, like laissez-faire capitalism, it does feel kind of like, yeah, this is funny. But I mean, imagine reading this in 1975, before that kind of like, let the market do what it's going to do mentality had taken hold, and just sort of laughing and being like, this is so, this could happen. Wow, this is a little scary. And now it's like, it happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, that's quaint. This is a piece of history. So
basically, yeah.
I could be reading it wrong as well, but I felt in these suburban scenes, it felt almost kind of Cheever-esque in some ways.
That's what I was thinking of.
That's good. Yeah.
I mean, obviously done in a different way, but I kept getting like kind of Cheever vibes from like these well-to-do, unhappy New York suburban families.
I mean, the Cheever thing, this is probably simplifying and oversimplifying.
Yeah.
But sort of that like sheen of suburbia as being like happiness, but like not. And everyone's like more complicated. And there's more danger in the world than you want to think there is. And this is kind of taking that as like the starting point.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, everything's fucking chaotic. There are cars everywhere. People can carry around tons of stuff in their pockets. Too much stuff. So we go from there though to the general role plan in Astoria, where we get the porn section.
Yeah, that was pretty great.
Very, very funny.
I love that. I love when he's looking at the pictures in his lap as she's in front of him. I thought that was just, I was laugh out loud funny.
How doing this?
I gotta find that because it's just the way he writes it too is kind of another really great. There's a lot of moments. I know I've listened to the other episodes, and I think a lot of you guys have talked a lot about the stark difference between the voices and the narrator. Like the narrator has these really like, I think one of your guests called it ponderous. Other people are like, it's really beautiful, but it's definitely a stylistic shift that happens, and it does feel abrupt sometimes. But that was a moment like that was just so perfectly rendered. There's a couple other that I highlighted where it's like, it's really kind of, the further I'm getting into the book, the more like the narrator's voice and the voices themselves kind of weave effortlessly in this kind of beautiful way. But that moment was just gold.
I love, and like, okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. So Terry is his secretary, and there's pictures that they find among the storeroom people of her fucking like multiple dudes in the office. And they're like, and they know it's her because of her ass, where they're like, yeah, that's her. No one else has an ass like that. That's definitely her. And then, but what I think is going on too is that Leo, who tells, what's his name? Norman? Is that
Norman.
Right?
Norman Angel.
About the pictures that he's the one taking them, or he's blackmailing her. He's doing something to her with those photos, but she keeps saying, I need to talk to you about Leo. He's bothering me. We never get the ending drop of that. But when she talks to her girlfriend, Myrna, about it, it seems to indicate that he's aware, or she's aware that he has the photos, or that he's been involved in the photos in some way or another. They also, it's funny that they like suggest that he goes to the bar over by the army barracks where all the soldiers are that are in the photos.
Yeah. I got to reread that section between her and Myrna, because I don't know if I picked up on that. That's one of the moments where where I might have missed. I
might be inventing. I might be projecting as well. That's one of the things with the patterns in this too, or with the nature of it, that because it's elusive, like you do fill in gaps to try and make points connect. And that might be one that I'm just making up. But she is concerned. He keeps saying, like, he says twice, like, what's the deal with the Leo? And she's like, I'll tell you another time. It's not important right now.
Okay. Yeah.
But then she refers to Myrna like, oh, and he has these pictures in his lap. Look at these dirty pictures. As I'm like, going over to
look at this section after having read it once, and with a reread, like what this section is like on page 159 in our edition. Terry, what would you think of a little redecorating in here? Maybe getting some of that paneling up on the walls and covering those pipes up there? Gee, I think that would be real nice. We ought to get some carpet in here and plants. We could get some plants in here and get a new leather sofa instead of that old chair over there, and a coffee table. That'd be real nice, Mr. Angel. We ought to get some pictures up on the walls here. So like setting up like sofas, new chairs. Let's get some pictures. They can just
sofa.
some of that great paneling on the wall.
Which does tie in. So this part will tie in a little bit to another thing, but I don't know if there's anything else in this section that you guys. Here's the old lawsuit with the over holes with the jukebox company. It's referenced here. That's why I picked up on that one.
The interesting thing with quite a few of the sections that we went through today, they're all like very sexualized.
Yeah.
Right, but between the couples and then the pictures, and then when we get to JR and the boys and what they're getting, and then
what's the lady's name?
It was very interesting how like this section was just extremely sexual throughout. The one that the paper and has like some version of a Kama Sutra. He's like, sorry, I thought I got the paper. It's the wrong way. Like everywhere throughout, he's weaved in a lot of sexuality and like the smut of the city through all of this.
Yeah, it's pretty dirty. Yeah, which is, and it's always treated in a way that's. I mean, I'm finally found the section I was looking for where he's looking at the photos in his lap, and it's beautiful though. Like as dirty as some of this stuff is, and sometimes it's hilarious. Like there's something really almost poetically beautiful about like this is on my page 152, and he's like, "I'm fine, Terry." He watched her turn for the door and then sat back staring at the worn leather chair near the coat rack. And then he came forward to open the soiled envelope down in the shelter of his desk, looking up from its contents to the chair, working his mouth and swallowing with apparent difficulty. And it goes on like that. And it's just kind of beautiful in a way in which he describes it. But he's basically describing this like kind of sad, unhappily married guy who's going to like beat it to his secretary's pictures as soon as she's out the door.
Yeah.
And then he goes on a trip to deal with something and fires her boyfriend.
Yeah.
Kenny. So I don't know how important that will be, but that is a plot point that happens here. And then we move on from there. So I don't know if there's anything else from that section, that scene or set of scenes that you guys want to talk about. Because there's a long one, because there's the beginning part where he's there, where Norman's there, and he leaves. And then Myrna and Terry work several days in succession, which you can tell because they break it up through the radio and through referencing like shopping at lunch or the plant or whatever. But it's like number of days have passed and they just sort of are working there and interacting. And then he sees Gibbs. When he goes to eat, he sees Gibbs with Gibbs's daughter, as it turns out. And Gibbs is involved in some acrimonious divorce, of which we know that there is later on in the book, later on in the section, he's complaining to his lawyer about he's fine with paying like child support, but alimony is not okay with it. He's got 11 cents to his name and he uses the last 10 cents to call someone. So he has like the 1 penny. He's like, I don't have anything. We need to get this settled. Marriage is awesome.
It is, but Gibbs is my guy in this book so far.
Gibbs is the best. He drinks so much. I love how he's like a little unhinged and like obsessed with like math things and physics and like the patterns and wants to write that book and never does. He's one of my favorite feudal characters. But I do like Decephalus too, because Decephalus has all the shit in his pockets.
Oh yeah, Decephalus makes me a little sad, but I think his home life is the worst. I know we're gonna get to that, but
yeah, we need to get to that fast. Here's the part where Terry sees it. She's like, "So I'm bringing this file folder over to his desk to check the specification." I guess he didn't see me because I looked down. And he's sitting there with all these dirty pictures in his lap.
So wait, does she know that those are her pictures or no? At that
he doesn't say that she does. She said, "Honest." He steps forward real quick, and no, if you hardly saw them, then maybe they weren't. Are you kidding? Like the one on top, she's going down. I mean, the guy was hung like Kenny. You can like I don't think she knows it's her, but it's like, yeah.
She caught enough to know something.
Yeah. Yep. So then, where do we go from there? This is where this guideline thing is helpful. So Decephalus is in town, runs into his wife Anne. They sit on the train. He's doing this thing called role therapy for like how to direct people to like look a certain way. She's reading the Kama Sutra. They are clearly not communicating with each other. They go home. Their kids are like, "We're gonna put on this fucking play." I don't know what's up with the one son that has like some sort of medical condition though. So they need to plug him in and like take care of his wires. And then the daughter, and she's like, "Let's do this play that we performed for you." And it's like all fucked up and sucks. And she's like, fucking things up. And meanwhile, they're like, "Dad," they keep saying like, "Dad." Dad's over there like, "Where's Dad?" He's like in the bathroom. And they're like, "It smells so bad." And they're like, "What did Dad eat?" And they're like, "Oh, the dog food again. Is it going to kill him?" And they're like, "It doesn't kill the dogs, whatever. It just gives them bad shit." Okay, so this is the part that I accidentally stumbled into in the cast of characters thing, because I was like, who the fuck's dad is this? They don't know. It's just a random dude living in their house. They think it's each other's dad.
Seriously? I didn't see that because I'm reading this with all those scene breaks.
You have to go to the cast of characters, and if you go down and be like, Dad.
I'm going to look because I have it open. I never thought to even look at Dad.
Itinerant living in the Decephalus' house that each one thinks is the other one's father.
Oh my God.
Good Lord.
Which I don't think you can pick up on here, but having accidentally stumbled onto it, I fucking love that.
Oh my, that's beautiful.
That makes that whole scene even better because they're both like so disinterested in him.
That's a great commentary again on the possibility of just Dad's here or whatever.
We don't know
in the other room.
So then I guess we go from there into JR's scene where JR's scheme is in motion, like hardcore. So he and Major Hyde's son is always trying to get porn through the mail. And so I'm going to point out that like back at this time especially, you could just write away for things for free, and they just send you free things, like essentially advertisements that then would try and get you involved in giving them money, but you'd get so many free things. And like, and so he's trying to get like free like nudie pictures or whatever. And meanwhile, JR is like working on like ways to sell or wooden forks from the Navy to the Army and make money off of this transaction by fronting it through a bank in Nevada where he registered this money under the class. He's got a fake name on that, so they don't know how old he is. It doesn't matter. He's getting a payphone installed at the school so he can keep making these calls and making these transactions and like working his whole range. And they keep mentioning, why do you get all these stocks? And they're like penny stocks in like this company that's not worth anything. The stocks aren't worth anything. And he's like, oh, because they have these untapped minerals. They have these untapped minerals. That they have this mineral rights. Like, don't worry about it. And like JR is working out a paper empire of magnificent proportions. And like, we only get a glimpse of it here, but it's like broad. He also clearly has printed up business cards for Bast, assuming that Bast is going to be his stand-in when he needs someone to do the adult side of business. Cause he's, 13.
Yeah, which he keeps saying, like, what's the difference if it's me or somebody else? Like, Hyde keeps saying, like, boy, you're going to get in trouble. And then JR's just like, what are they going to, like, no one's going to ask any questions. And if they do, like, who cares? And it's kind of genius that he's right. Like, basically, no one will care.
Yeah.
As long as the money comes through.
Wonderful, too, with the adult and the kids and the adult trying to explain to them, like, how stupid this is. Like, meanwhile, the kid's, like, working it. What you want to do, get yourself a JCPenney credit card and start building your credit slowly this way. And then you could upgrade to a Discover card. Like, try to give them this like stage, like mowing the lawn advice.
Yeah. Get a paper out. It builds character.
Yeah. Character.
I do like that setup of, look at those minerals. Look at all those trees. They got to get rid of all those trees before they can dig anything or whatever. This is useless. It's pointless. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, there's also like there's a very anti-Semitic thread that runs throughout this, or like the characters are very anti-Semitic. But there's also this is like very much the 80s too, like anti-environmental, anti-health food sort of vibe.
Yeah.
Which is very much of that period of like, fuck that shit.
Yeah, I love the sort of this time capsule of like making fun of things that now we would never think to really make fun of. It's like that. It's like the Pina Colada song, which is like the worst song ever. And like one of the chorus in the ad is like, if you're not into yoga, was like a selling point for hooking up with someone. Whereas now that would like never get you a date if you said that. Like, oh, I'm looking for a woman who's not into yoga. But back then it's like, oh, I'm looking for somebody who's not some spacehead who's into yoga. Like,
yeah,
I was trying to cheat on my wife, and I found her on Twitter. Or on Tinder. We're meant to be. Like, that's like if they redid that song today, right?
Yeah, exactly. We should rewrite the song and update it to 2020.
I also like beverages with coconut milk.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very fond of. I've switched from almond to oat milk.
One of my favorite, like subtle satirical bits in here that does ring very true is on our edition. It's 180, 181, but it's where JR is like a ribbon Hyde for getting like so many porny things and so many things like the vibro penis and like, and he's like, what am I gonna do, man? They're just sending this shit to me. It just keeps coming. And it's like, yeah, it does, doesn't it? Like, Instagram and Google know everything.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of scary to see that was always the thing. The sort of, you bought this, maybe you'll like this.
Yep. And this is where they're on page, and the NYRB is 183, is sort of the reference to exactly what you're saying, where it's like, what am I supposed to do? Go like really sell shit and really do an import-export business? Like, no, I'm going to find the shortcut. He is like the Wolf of Wall Street sort of character or whatever. That's going to take over all that stuff, because he's like looking that angle now. Like, no way. Yeah,
Jared's kind of brilliant in a way. I mean, for all of his sort of, what I don't know what's coming. I know he's going to build up this big empire on paper, at least. And I don't know the climax yet. I'm going to see that. But for all of the possible ruin this could cause, or the possible critiques we could have of like this sort of character, like he's kind of the perfect American opportunist in a way.
Did you make anything of the clock that's referenced in that part about how excited they are about having a clock?
He gets a free clock from the bank because it's like one of those gags that used to. I mean, I remember this from
open a checking account and get a lamp or something stupid, alarm radio.
Exactly. So he gets a clock because I think he deposits part of the money from their class trip to this bank in Nevada to get this free clock. There's a reference to clock in one of the first sections. I meant to go back and look at that. But in the physics department with Gibbs, he references, or there's a clock that's there as well. And I can't remember if this has something to do with like just general entropy or like things breaking down, but of the clocks being like that mechanistic, again, it's another mechanical reproduction of time, but a mechanical reproduction of something that will inevitably sort of fail. That clocks, and like those clocks in particular did not work they were a pile of shit. Like he just kept buying clocks. Remember like the fucking alarm clocks we had to wake up with where they had the numbers that flipped over? And they're like that's essentially, I think, what we're, not that that's this clock, but we're talking about that sort of like mechanistic clock thing.
Yeah, clocks are perfect, I guess, when you think of it that way. It's supposed to be, it's the closest we'll ever come to a perpetual motion machine in the sense that it's time that never stops, but eventually they're going to break. And then it's like the sad thing of, there's a poem by Kieran Carson about being in Belfast and seeing a clock tower that had been bombed, and like for 30 years it hadn't been fixed, and you could see the exact moment the bomb went off because it was forever frozen at like 12:51 or whatever.
Yeah,
it's just like there's a kind of a sad like thing about that. It's like,
there's a Julio Cortázar bit where he says like the worst gift you can give someone is a watch because it just reminds them that they're losing every second of their life.
Yeah, my wife always would ask me like if I wanted to watch, and I don't like wearing them, and I jokingly said that I think I still live from them. I'm like, I don't want a reminder of my mortality constantly staring at me. Like it's kind of a jerk, pretentious thing to say, but
I had a legit beef with like my ex-wife that we're not allowed to have clocks in the house for that reason. Like I had a real hang up about clocks and watches and shit. Yeah.
So that was your rule?
Yeah, it was my rule. I was like, no clocks.
Have you eased on that now, or are you still?
No, there's one right there that I can see from here, but I didn't even notice it existed until about 4 seconds ago. So
discover a new layer of your monstrosity. And then there's another one.
Clock haters. Everyone who loves clocks can now drop out of this podcast.
This is going to be. I really am glad that I'm here to see the ruination of this podcast and all of your.
I will show you. These are this is a visual representation of our listenership by every season. Episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, episode 4.
So I got in right at the meaty part, right?
Yeah, right in there, right before we like start making fun of Ohio.
Well, okay, well, never mind. I'll leave Ohio alone.
Don't bother.
My dad lives there. I shouldn't make fun of it, but.
So then you go back to the school. There's a shitload of people in the office. In fact, I'm going to use the guide to remember who they all are. There is Coach Vogel. This is the description. Scene 27, school. Coach Vogel and Whiteback chat in boys' room. Oh, that's right. They're in the bathroom at first. Whiteback returns to the principal's office, joining Decephalus, Hyde, and Sty, an insurance agent. Gibbs is on television, who later joins them in the office. Gibbs learns of Schramm's accident, takes a swing at Major Hyde, then leaves for the post office and train station. So a bunch of little bits and pieces there. We get a bit where like Miss Flesh, we initially knew that she was an accident and referenced that she may have died. She doesn't die. She's in fact suing billions of people. She's suing the asphalt company. She's suing everyone in the school, all sorts of people, which is wonderful. And then this is where the the title for this episode came from is that in this one, the NYRB, it's 189, is that they're talking about Assemblyman Pecci, who's running for senator, and he's busy out activating his SOS campaign. SOS from Mario campaign. And you're like, SOS sounds a little negative PR-wise, SOS. Stamp out smut. Let me tell you what my boy got in the mail, Sty. Sent away for a ball glove and wait. Will you turn that up, Dan? Sound. And then you have all these interludes in here that I think are one of the most comedic. I'm going to be pretentious here. This is the 1976 version of Flaubert's meeting with Madame Bovary and her lover at the pig festival at the farm, or whatever you call it, where they give the pigs the blue ribbons and all that.
Yeah.
Like at that thing, this is that where they're having these conversations that are semi-necessary about like lawsuits and whatever else. And then you have all these kids coming on and saying shit about their trips, and then Gibbs saying things about like the different people, and you just get these interludes that are like the high and low right back and forth. Like, but it's not a lot of high anymore. Like in Flaubert's setup, there's like this high romantic thing that he's like undercutting, and here it's like he's undercutting administrative talk, and administrative talk is already satirical in a sense. So it's like you're stuck in this mire, and then you get these jokes that keep undercutting that, and they can never do anything. I think this is absolutely fucking genius.
Yeah, Gibbs again brings it in this section.
In New York on the field trip, which is good. I thought that was going to come back because I thought we knew that, but then I wasn't sure if maybe we just missed it. But they do reference something about a lost child.
Oh, right, yeah.
This isn't it, because I marked a different one for my quote of the week, but one that I marked as a quote of the week but early on was there's a part where, as Whitebeck was saying, he suggested doing a remote special on my shelter, tying it right in with the whole theme, what America's all about, wall thickness. Wall thickness is what America's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, rugged individualism and stay the fuck away.
And wall thickness.
I love that whole section. I love Gibbs really brings it in this section with the dialogue that they're listening to, that he's telling the students about like the church squatting on the taxpayers' dollars, and then later he takes a swing at a guy. Like Gibbs definitely solidified himself as my favorite character in this section. And then he's arguing on the phone, like you said before, and then he cons his way into it by speaking German. Is it on the train? Yeah, it's just beautiful.
Yeah, he's like, I got these tickets I need to get a refund for so I can buy a ticket in New York. And they're like, you got to mail it away to this address. And they're like, next. And he's like, there's no one fucking behind me. I'm the only person here.
It's a beautiful dodge that he has there on the train. I thought that was just beautiful.
Yeah. That was hilarious to me.
That seems like a scene that Terry Gilliam needs to direct something.
What's
like
that?
Terry Gilliam needs to direct that scene where he's trying to like, it's so bizarre and weird and crazy and just everything falling apart. So good.
I also in this section, this is the one I'm looking for. I think it's on my page 176, but there's this whole thing that just amused me so much where they're teaching the little future homemakers. They're basically teaching something that they're going to call like home ec motivational center. Like they're basically trying to just indoctrinate young girls into being homemakers by introducing all these products to them and so forth. And that whole campaign was just beautiful. I mean, in addition to satirizing like law and all the other things and finance and the market and all that and marriage and all that sort of like bullshit suburban American dream stuff, there's also this great, poke at the ways in which we implement products and advertising, all these things. It's kind of beautiful. Like there's nothing so far spared in these 200 pages. But that was maybe something that stood out to me as just being absolutely hilarious. That whole section just killed me. And then, the whole mixing up retreads and retards, it's just fucking hilarious.
The retreads, like I remember when I first got to that last night, I was like, oh, I remember this now. This is one of the things I remember from the first time I read this was the retreads. I also believe, and I don't want to give away any spoilers, I think that home ec thing is going to turn very funny.
Really?
I think there's going to be something interesting with that. Someone mentioned in the chat here that they're wondering if Gaddis is making women out to be a source of entropy. Felt very much like film noir femme fatales. And I think that I don't know if it's entropy, but it's so much as men are always trying to put together systems. The men in this are always putting together systems, and the systems aren't going to work. They're like almost anti-natural because they're like assumptions that are based in like economic and behavioral motivations, like all their stuff with like the way that they're going to get these schemes to be able to keep the plant, to keep in charge, things moving. They're all like these artificial schemes, and the women tend to be much more grounded in a way. Like even Amy here that goes and is getting the stock, like she's like very much taking care of her kid and is like very like grounded in that sense. And what's her name? Is it Anne? Anticephalus? Yeah, Anticephalus is very much into her sexuality and like is very much like a naturey sort of like that, what you're talking about, like the health, yoga, 70s sort of character. So I wonder if it's not so much that they're sources of entropy as sources of something, a different form of the world, like a more natural world, versus the artificial nature. Like even clocks are artificial. Clocks are just trying to mark time. They're not, it is like an artificial way of watching something. And all these systems are very male systems that they're creating of like who gets ahead. Don't let your money not work. Your money has to work. Everything has to be like this forward propulsive phallocentric sort of notion. And I wonder if like the entropy stems from the fact that like systems break down as much as they do from like alternative ways of seeing it. But I think that will play out really over the next 500 pages.
Is that all?
That's
there's possibly, I mean, I didn't think of that. And, I'm reading this as a dude, and there's possibly a feminist like lens through which to read this, even though there's not. I mean, the female characters there's plenty of them. And you could probably launch some critiques about like the female characters from Gaddis's pen. I'm sure that's a critique you can make. But at the same time, if you look at it that way, you're right. It is usually the men who are the schemers and the planners and the people who are trying to impose order on chaos. And all that's clearly going to fall apart. And there's an argument that the women aren't really going down that route, which is probably a feminist reading of this. So I like that.
Yeah. So there is like, then the last two scenes are like what we talked about, where Gibbs is trying to get to Eigen and to Schramm to find out about Schramm poking his eye out. And he referring to like an artist, like the Van Gogh, the guy with the ear. Like it's a very funny bit. And then Amy goes to, is it Tyron Industries? I always forget the name of it. Yeah, whatever. She picks up her son at the Penn Station, takes him to a bunch of museums. Her husband comes home. She's like, he wants to go to a hockey game. They're gone in the morning. And Typhon International is that she goes and talks to Davidoff, but wants to see the lawyer about something. And there's some weird stuff in there that I was like having a harder time with following too, of like, when you say things are difficult, of like what exactly is happening when she's riding the elevator with these kids. Like, I think all these people are just, I hope that I'm right about this in a way, and also wrong, but it feels like that scene is her walking through the building and everyone just leering at her. Like there's a line that just comes out of nowhere of like, you like to give head? Posed in a tone as vacant as the face she fled for the lobby-length explosion of black streaked with mad reserve on white doors, opening silently on a coatless figure askew there as though he just burst free from the painting's restless labyrinth like a demented Virgil for the amorphous Dante, surfacing behind him, dropping a briefcase of Gladstone bag design squares before her in collision to stare with apologetic fixity blurred in the rimless lenses into the top of her dress.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure like what was always happening there, but it seemed like people are just like leering, like it's like she walked into a place where it is a den of dudes, like a sausage factory of dude.
Yeah, even
which doesn't mean anything, is like clearly feels like a holding company.
Yeah, even Davidoff is kind of because I underlined the paragraph, the big chunky paragraph after is kind of like another one of these great, here's the narrator and here's some dialogue in the middle, flowed well, where it's like no damage done. And I love this line, recovering full stature from his version of a bow, Davidoff came up, closing his full tie throttle at his throat with a punch for the down button and get us some figures, just get us some figures on it. Miss Joubert ought to be interested in this little project too. He turned to see her already out of reach. It just kind of blends like the narrator and the voices really, really well. But that line about like even Davidoff's like discomfort and sort of awkwardness, it's just like, this is not a good place. This is a very male place, whether it's like aggressive leering at her or just these kind of like awkward, really terrible interactions between her and Davidoff.
Yeah, and to give some credence to like the sort of female reading of it would be that she's getting all the shares. She's going to be in charge of this shit because of all the preferred stockholder shares that she signed off on earlier. If that one rule gets invoked in the bylaws that JR points out, she would be like a major voting partner of deciding what happens with the company, with Diamond Cable in particular, which has already lost $4, and they're all pissed about it. Their stock sucks. My stocks, by the way, also suck. I started doing that Robinhood thing before the collapse of the entire world, and I bought shitloads of weed stocks, and now they're not worth anything. I'm super disappointed.
See, even what you're saying right now is going so over my head. Buying stocks, that's a thing people do, right?
You can get them on this app. Yeah, I spent $100, and now my stocks are worth $60.
See, this is like the ending of Trading Places, where I know narratively what happens, but I don't understand what happens.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Don't buy stock in weed, apparently. So do you have a favorite line from the section, Vince?
I've read a couple of my favorites, but if there's a favorite moment of it, it's probably the whole JR and Hyde interactions. It's just, I really love when those two are together. I think it's just kind of like you said in other episodes of this that, it doesn't take long to figure out who's talking, and like the easiest people to discern are JR and Hyde, because it's almost always like, boy, you're going to get in trouble when this happens. And then JR comes back and goes, now, why would I get in trouble for this? And then he like completely knocks that argument away. And it's just basically that's their entire interaction so far. And I love when they compare their mail. I just think it's great. Yeah.
You got a favorite line, Brian? Don't steal mine.
Yeah, I actually had one. There's several, but I had one from that same interaction that Vince is talking about. It's on page 178 of our version. I'm just ripping the stamp off it. What's so great about some dumb Canadian stamp? You collect them for a stamp collection. What do you think? Like someday they're really worth something, boy. They're worth more than this crap. This, what's this one? Ace Development Corporation? Where'd you send off for this crap anyway? Like I just love that idea of this one stamp is going to be worth more than all the stuff that JR is doing.
That's like how I used to collect baseball cards, and my friend started business.
This is my college fund. Don't you get it?
Like, don't worry, I got this Bo Jackson. He's got the bat over his back, and it's black and white. I'm going to fucking college on this. What are you doing? They're like, oh, I just founded my own company, and now I'm a millionaire. That's cool. But you don't have Bo Jackson. So my favorite is on 191, and it's from the part where in the school, in the office, where they're watching the TV and they're talking, and the kids are talking about their trip. And this is one of the kids trying to summarize the trip that they took and what they learned about stocks. Our trip was to buy the Share of America. It is this company that makes things, their baskets. Why nobody buys these baskets is there is this law, the law of supply and decline, passed by Congress, consisting of 3 branches: judicial, executory, and legislature. I couldn't stop laughing when I was reading that. Yep, he took all the pieces and put it together completely wrong. Love it. So anyways, anything you want to plug today, Vince? Where can people
what's that?
Where can people buy your books?
Probably the best way is to go through Bookshop. I would normally say just go to a publisher's website or go to a bookstore's website, but considering the publishers or bookstores aren't really carrying my books these days too much because there's not a lot. There's struggling bookstores all over Chicago.
Well,
Bookshop's probably
enough for your book.
What's that?
It's because they're not carrying enough of your book.
Yeah, it's selling like
hotcakes. Volumes. Looking at you, Madison Street. Looking at you, Pilsen.
Pilsen Community Books was selling it for a while, but yeah, ever since they got taken over, I don't know. I'm just kidding. No, it's probably the fastest way to get it is to go to bookshop.org. But yeah, please buy that. I'm also should probably give a shout out to another Chicago magazine where I'm allegedly the poetry reviews editor. Although I'm kind of slacking on it this month because of grading, but I'll be putting some reviews up of some stuff soon. They tasked me to try and get reviews of poetry because it's just not something people want to review as much as you'd think. Apparently people don't love poems. What can I say?
Weird. I have one issue of the ACM, and I think it involves Kathy Acker. It's down in my basement.
Really?
Yep.
I'll look it up, because it should be all the archived.
1997, 98.
Okay. Man, I'm hoping it's all archived. I don't know.
Brian, what do you want to plug? Anything?
Absolutely nothing. Just everybody have a great, happy New Year. And it's not going to get any better just because it changes. But you can be optimistic. I'm just saying.
Christ.
I mean, is it at all important that the year itself is passing, or is like everything still so screwed it doesn't really matter? I mean, how are we looking
Symbolism
at
is meaningful. Symbolism is meaningful, and your viewpoint is meaningful on these things. So that's my hot positive take. I'm going to sign up for my Mining the Delkey Archive Substack thing, because I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I've got like 5 episodes planned out that are going to be really interesting. And it's fun to have like IP to play with and to do something that's not the normal like business of translation stuff for once. So sign up for it. It's free. You'll get some random shit. There's a video up there right now. If you go to the first post, you can watch me give a video tour of Delkey Archive's offices and their warehouse. And that should be worth the price of signing up for free to make me feel like 2020 isn't the worst.
Cool.
Let me guilt you into this. Next week, January 6th, we'll be back for scenes 23 through 42, which in the NYRB edition is pages 210 through 289. And for your edition, for the Penguin, for the Knopf, and for the Delkey, is 197 through 272. So it'll be like just over a third of the way through the book after
Nice.
next week. So
Nice.
Excellent. Thank you guys for being on here.
Thanks.
Pleasure as always.